Is the slide visible? Yes.
No, sir.
Now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. In our previous class, we had discussed about denial of service attacks, isn't it? In the same way, distributed denial of service attacks. So DDoS attacks. So denial of service, I told you in the previous class itself, as the name itself implies, denial of service will be denied. Whatever the service which was being offered by a sender or receiver, that will be denied by that particular recipient. So that such type of attack is called as denial of service attack. Whereas here in distributed denial of service attack, since we are using a network of systems, network of computers, so here this network is having different systems connected throughout the network. So that is why this service will be denied throughout the network. Systems will be denying the service and some of the systems will be accepting the service. So like that, it is distributed. So that is why it is called as distributed denial of service. So here, this distributed DOS, distributed denial of service attack, is a form of master slave technology, master and slave technology. So I think all of you know about client and server technology. Client and server technology means client will be sending the request and server will be responding to the client's request. All of you know about this. In the same way, in master and slave technology, the master computer will be sending throughout the network. There exists one master. We will choose one system as the master system, and that master system will be just assigning work for all the remaining systems which are called as slave systems. So all the other systems apart from the master system are called as slave systems. So master is assigning the work to all the slave systems such that the slave systems will perform the work task assigned to it, and just it will produce the result, and the result is transmitted to the master. So all the system's results are transmitted to the master. So here in this technique, it may be either using TCP or UDP, connection oriented. The network may be using TCP data transmission through connection oriented protocol TCP, and connection less protocol, that is UDP. Without connections also, without physical connections also, data transmission is possible through the means of UDP protocols. So next, UDP protocol. Apart from UDP protocol, an alternative of UDP is also called as SYNFLOODs. Synchronization of the floods. Synchronization of the floods. So whatever the floods means overlapping data. So whatever systems, so that will be synchronized from one system to another system. That is why it is called as synchronization flood, SYNFLOOD. So here this DDoS attack is also similar to distributed denial of service, will be acting throughout the network such that it will be creating the masters, and the masters will be assigning some of the tasks to the slaves, and the tasks are performed by the slaves and the results are generated to the master, such that if any of the slave is denying the service from the master, that is denying the request from the master, then the slave doesn't perform the task there, such that the result is not guaranteed. Result is not generated by the slave system, and that result may not be transmitted to the master system. So like that, if any one system fails, then also the other systems will be working there, but the overall result may not be generated since all the systems are not equally participating in the data transmission. Since the systems. So here in this part, there will be a lot of network traffic, and TCP, UDP protocols are playing a main role here during the data transmission. Either it may be connection oriented or connection less data transmission. So next one, DNS poisoning. DNS poisoning. So the name DNS means domain name service. Domain name service. So we will be having one domain for each and every web page. So that web page or website will be having some domain name server such that with that particular web page we'll be having an IP address associated with that. So the domain name server, it will be just poisoned, means the data which is related to that particular domain name is getting poisoned, means it's getting modified by an unauthorized user. Poisoning. So DNS cache poisoning, actually it is called as DNS cache poisoning. We'll see what is called DNS cache poisoning. So see here, caching incorrect resource record that does not originate from authoritative DNS sources. So we will see an example for this, then we can better understand what is called DNS cache poisoning. So see here, see the figure over here. We are having step 1, step 2, step 3. So see here, I want to access www.example.com. This is my website which I need to access. So this is done at the client end. So the client is sending request to the DNS caching server stating that I want to access www.example.com. So this DNS caching server will just catch the informations regarding that particular website www.example.com, and this request is given a request ID called question ID, QID. QID is given as the request ID, question ID 64571. See here, QID is equal to 64571. Some question ID or request ID is generated there. So if this particular caching server is correctly operated, then it should move on to the third step with the particular website, that is example.com website with that QID 64571. So this is the actual procedure where this particular website is having 168.1.1. So this is the domain name service IP address, DNS IP address. This is the actual correct procedure. And we can also cross check, the client will also cross check whether the web server 192.168.1.1 is related to this particular website or not. We can check the IP address in the web server and we can also confirm that yes, it is the appropriate web server. This is the right way of performing the operation. Whereas whenever this DNS cache poisoning attack is said to be happened, so then in that case, what it will happen? See here, client is sending the request to DNS caching server, and here in the DNS caching server, the poisoning is taking place. The poisoning is taking place such that the request ID, QID is given with the value 64571, and it will be just having some previous QID 4570, 64571. So just this unauthorized pretender, see here, number 3. Here, this is step 1, this is step 2, and actual step is this one, third one. But here we are also having a third step here, that is the malicious access, unauthorized access. So see here, this is the fake user, third, number 3. He will be pretending to be the authorized zone, authoritative zone, and he will be just having the list of QIDs 64567, 64570, 64571. So in that case, we are having a proper match with that whatever the QID which was being generated by the DNS caching server. See here, 64571 and 64571. It is matched. So the information is passed to this particular unauthorized zone. This particular unauthorized zone. So pretending to be an authorized zone. Here, this particular one is the attacker here. So such type of cache poisoning means modification of data. So here, what is the data modified here? The request itself is modified. 64571 QID is modified here by the pretender. And if you observe the IP address, the actual IP address of the website www.example.com is 192.168.1.1, and this fake user's IP address is 192.168.1.99. So like that, it is just creating a dummy IP address, and it will be performing the malicious action there. Such type of attack is called as DNS cache poisoning. So all those things are explained in this fake IP address. See here, redirected to the fake IP address. So the fake IP address will be sent there, and that will be getting the information, and that information that was been taking the right information. This is the thing happening in the DNS cache poisoning. So here proper setup is to be taken care. Proper care is to be given in order to ensure that the IP address, whether the correct IP address is given by the user as well as web server. So whatever the web server which is having the list of IP addresses, it should have the correct IP address, and whatever the user, whoever the user who is performing the operation, he should note the correct IP address, and then he should perform the operation with that correct IP address. Then only it is possible for us to have minimization of such attacks. Next, border gateway protocol security attacks. BGP protocol security attacks. So here this BGP protocol, whenever any mistake identified in this BGP protocol, that may lead to several major internet outages. So internet outages means what? The data, whatever the data which is transmitted through internet, that will be outaged to some unauthorized access whenever this border gateway protocol has certain flaws. Flaws means errors or mistakes. So here these problems are likely to get worse because cyber warriors and criminals and even script kiddies have the potential to exploit BGP to deny service. So this is very critical attack. Why? Because as many of the cyber warriors and criminals and even script kiddies are having good potential to exploit this BGP to deny the service. So here we are having many types of BGP attacks. Border gateway protocol, where we can deny the service by the given system. So whatever the service which was being offered by the system, it is getting denied by the network, denied by the attack there. So that is why it is called as one of the BGP attack. And next one, sniffing. This requires control of device along the path of the victim's communication. So here we have to know the path of the victim's communication, and it should be having a device which is notified as a controller of the path's victim communications. So all the communications are controlled here by that particular device. So that is called as sniffing. And next, routing to endpoints and malicious nodes. So here the malicious nodes are routed here. So information of routing is transmitted to the malicious. So routing to endpoints in malicious networks. So here in the data transmission, during the transmission, there may be some attacks happening, and this may be caused due to routing information to endpoints in malicious networks. And next, creation of root instabilities. So there may be certain instabilities in the root because of such malicious networks and malicious data. There may be such root instabilities within the network. Those instabilities are to be controlled. So that is the main objective of this BGP attacks. And next, denial of service, the same thing, routing to endpoints in malicious networks, the same thing which we had discussed in our previous slide. And different types of attacks. There are mainly two types of attacks, that is active attack and passive attack. So see the figure over here. This figure explains the attack called passive attack. So here Alice and Bob are the two users, whereas Eve is who is involving in between these two users, Alice and Bob, such that Alice is sending some information. That information is received by Eve, and Bob is also sending some information, but that information is received by Eve. So like that, the information is transmitted from Alice to Eve and Bob to Eve, whereas the information is not properly channeled. So that is the thing happening here in passive attack. In the same way, if we move on to active attack, see here, quite opposite of the passive attack is the active attack. Here, the arrow marks are given in the quite opposite direction of passive attack. So see here, Alice and Bob are the two users in the network, internet, and Eve is performing the replay operation, insertion, and modification of message. Both are receiving the fake messages which are being generated by the fake user, that is the third party user, which is called as Eve here. So modification, replay and insertion of modification of real message is done within this particular message. Next, we also have three types of active attacks, that is distributed attacks, insider attacks and close-in attacks. So distributed attacks. In distributed attack, the attacker alters the communication by adding malicious code like a Trojan horse or a backdoor program. So we can add malicious codes like a Trojan horse or backdoor program. So this is called as distributed attack. Next, insider attack. An insider attack involves someone in the organization such as a disgruntled employee attacking the network. So here there may be a black sheep person who is working in the same attacking that particular network, and he will be getting the information to the user. So that is why it is called as insider attack. Next one, close-in attack. Close-in attack involves someone attempting to get physically close to the network components like data and systems. So here some attempt is done to physically become close to the network components. Its main target is to become close to the network components like data and systems. Their purpose is to learn more and more about a network. So here it is a close-in attack. Next, phishing attack. A phishing attack aims to acquire sensitive information about the user, such as username, password, and full address from various websites of which the user is a member. So bank account details like username, password, and full address are given. So it will be getting the information from the bank related information like usernames, passwords, and full addresses from various websites of which the user is a member. So whatever the users related information, everything will be
Sir, you are not audible.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, there is some network issue. Okay, now it's okay. Yes, I think the slide is visible to you, isn't it?
No, sir, not.
So this is called as phishing attack. Here, this figure shows the phishing attack in detail. So if you observe the steps here, first step, internet customer is just approaching the fisher here, fisher, internet customer, and bank and internet. So these are the components which are playing major role here. The first step, the fisher, is background study of user and craft the perfect email containing malicious link. So that is the first step. So background study of the user. Second step, user forwards the email to the other email addresses with which multiples the chances. So the chance of getting copied. Next, third step is done from the fisher end. That is, create an easy route to the fisher for the installation of malware. And fourth step is done by the bank end. By the fisher from the bank end begins to steal the credentials and information. The fisher can begin to steal the credentials and information from the bank. So this is the thing happening in the phishing attacks. So it will just get the details of username and password related to our accounts, bank accounts and online banking accounts, everything, and there is no guarantee for safety here with this phishing attack. Next type of attack is hijack attack. Hijack attack, here the name itself implies that there will be a hijacker in between the data transmission and the hacker. This hijacker is called as hacker who takes out who takes over a session and disconnects the other individual from communication. So it will disrupt the data transmission in the middle. And spoof attack. In a spoof attack, hacker modifies the source address of the packets he or she is sending so that they appear to be coming from someone else. So actually, the information which is generated from the source is being modified by the hacker, and that particular information is as the genuine information sent by the appropriate sender. Next, buffer overflow. Buffer overflow attack is when the attacker sends more data to an application than it is expected. So whenever the amount of data which is expected, if it is crossing that particular expectation also, then such type of attack is called as buffer overflow. Exploit attack. In an exploit attack, the attacker recognizes a security problem within an operating system or a piece of software and leverages that should knowledge by exploiting the vulnerability. So here, exploiting attacks means that the attacker recognizes a security problem by exploiting the different type attacks here with their possible vulnerabilities. Last one is password attack. So here the password which is protected and kept safe from attackers, it will be attacked. So this password which is will be attacked here, and there may be two types of password attacks, that is a dictionary attack or a brute force attack and a hybrid attack. Dictionary attack uses a word list file such that which is a list of potential passwords. So from this list of potential passwords, the distributed dictionary attack can get the exact password. Second one, a brute force attack is when the attacker tries every possible combination of characters. So here, a brute force attack is when the attacker tries every possible combination of characters. So possible combination of characters can be given a chance while identifying the password. And next, hybrid attacks combines both the dictionary attacks as well as the brute force attacks. So that's all about password attacks. So here, a table is given which differentiates the intention, attacks, and threats. So active attacks and passive attacks, they are classified, their intention is classified, and the different types of attacks which comes under active and different types of attacks which comes under passive are differentiated here. And passive attacks are a threat to confidentiality and active attacks are a threat to integrity and availability. Okay, these things already we had discussed: confidentiality, integrity, authentication, non-repudiation, and access control. Already we had discussed. So there is no need of studying once again this one. Last topic is
So you're not again audible.